Welcome to Berlin, Germany, and after some shocking results yesterday, the race for playoffs is blown wide open. We'll see if Rogue and Vitality can bounce back today in a crucial matchup for both teams. Good day, guys. I'm Excoundrel. I'm joined by Vedius, and actually for the first time this summer, Medic.
It's Medic time!
Medic time!
Woo! I don't need to be
To
here.
Englishmen and Welshmen, what could be better on a fine, sunny Saturday afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Nice to have you guys here for my second ever Ready Check. It's pretty exciting. Now, yesterday was explosive, I think, to say the least. We had a lot of upsets, and that means the race for playoffs is getting tighter because the people that were supposed to be losing are winning, and the people that are supposed to be winning are losing.
Yeah, it does feel like everyone is beating everyone, but you know, the one thing that remains the same, G2 is sitting at the top. I feel like that they have asserted their dominance across the entirety of the league, and right now the gap is only getting bigger between them and everyone else.
I mean, to me, you have to look at the bottom of the standings as well. With 3 teams tied for 6th place, the race for a playoff berth is very much alive, and with Excel performing well yesterday as well, and Origen and Fnatic maybe falling down the standings, things are going to get tight in playoffs.
It is a very, very long shot for Excel to be able to make it back up to 6th place. They basically need to win everything here, but the dream is there, and that is all that we need to go from to make sure that Excel keep themselves in the running. They're not the only ones putting their names out there as well, but let's talk about Excel specifically.
And we've got to talk about the man in the jungle, Excoundrel. This man had a huge impact on his team's win yesterday, stealing so many clutch Gnar ultimates away from Prophet in the top lane, and really kind of showcasing to Prophet how you use that ultimate.
It was just incredible all around. It felt a bit sorry for Prophet. It felt like his only job was to give Excoundrel Gnar ultimate in that game, but all round, Exile had a stellar performance. Only one team fight really went badly for them. The rest of the game, they were totally in control.
I want to draw your attention to Schalke, no fear, in the 4th position right here at 7-4. They've had a really good set of results recently on a 3-game tear, on a hot streak in the LEC right now. You have to talk about this team when you're contending for that 2nd spot now.
One of the things that we always talk about and the player that we always look at is Trick in the jungle. This guy has been making waves in the success for Schalke, and many fans were afraid. Schalke have been in this position before. They were 7-2 last split, but it looks like that they're in form and they're continuing to get better as we move into the second half.
I think you have to start looking at Schalke as a team that could make it all the way to Athens through that bye. If they get that 2nd spot, they secure themselves that lock-in position.
And with a very important game today up against Splice, that's going to be a big indicator of whether or not they can challenge that top 2 spot.
And you can't talk about yesterday without talking about Misfits beating Fnatic.
Oh.
That was the upset of the day. I mean, where do we even start?
Well, I think the thing is, every other team we've talked about their junglers. When you look at Misfits, you have to look at their top laner and their mid laner. Dan has been playing incredibly well recently, but Leader is the man of the hour for Misfits. His assassin play is absolutely impeccable, and it seems like he did finally get the int out of his system and is now really stepping up to the plate for Misfits.
The trick is, move him out of the mid lane, put him top lane, and he can't get camped anymore. He was able to get that 1 versus 1. He actually had a really good performance up against Whippo. Didn't get killed at level 1 like Caps did.
Good job.
And he showcased what he can do when he gets his hands on an assassin. 7 solo kills.
That's a record, right?
It was almost
tied,
a record.
yeah.
Tied with Featherven back from, I think, 2017 or 2018. But, like, very impressive. This was the leader that fans wanted to see come onto the LEC
That's
stage.
the leader that I wanted to see coming onto the LEC stage. That's the leader that we saw all through European Masters, and I'm glad that he finally got to show his stuff. Not only that, I love the flexibility between him and Dan in terms of champion pool as well, and the fact that they can literally just swap lanes and seemingly perform the same way. But you know, I think what I really want to highlight with Leader and Dan is that pipeline of talent that we've had come from European regional leagues and the European Masters. A lot of the guys that you see on your screen here, Leader, Dan, Mystiques and Jeskla, they've all come from that talent pipeline.
And we kind of wanted to highlight these players specifically because of the impact that they've had on the success of their team as well. When we think about how XL have been able to shift, even though it hasn't resulted in a lot of wins, we've seen steady improvement from the side of XL, largely due to the introduction of this bot lane and their aggressive playstyle. Meanwhile, for Misfits, it feels like that these two are the players that you always look at in order to carry games. They got their first win with Dan, they got their second win with Leader. Now we're only hoping to see more consistency from the young talent that is making waves here on the LEC stage.
And I think the great thing about that young talent as well is a third of the players, a third of the players in the LEC at the moment have come up through those regional leagues and through the EU Masters. So when you look forward to the future, you know we have this bedrock of rookie talent that is just going to grow and grow.
What is so beautiful about this as well is that it's grassroots. This is regional leagues that anybody can get involved in. You guys at home, if you're really, really desperate to get involved in professional league, that is a visible pipeline to take you from a European regional league to the biggest stage of League of Legends of all, right here at the LEC, which is insane. But I don't want to just focus on the people that we have. I also want to have a little look at the people that we might see as well. And these are two names that you may have heard of. On the right, we have Finn from Rogue. Let's start with him.
So he recently joined the roster as like one of the substitutes, but it's also important to note that he did actually play in the LEC last split. He was one of the subs that came in to try and help Rogue come out of their slump, and he was actually making waves. He was helping the team actually turn some poor performances into wins halfway through the split. Now, ultimately, it didn't result in a lot of success for Rogue, but domestically, he was finding a lot of success now in the Ultra Liga, and we have high hopes for him if he makes a return onto the LEC stage.
I think the thing for me with Finn is that he was just a little bit undercooked when he came into the LEC. He needed a little bit more time to kind of mature and work out exactly how his playstyle was going to work with a team at the highest level. And now maybe that when we're seeing Kleds being picked a little bit more, it's one of his pocket picks. Maybe we'll see him back on the LEC stage pretty soon.
And on the left here, a face that you may not have seen before if you haven't watched the European Masters is Yenax from SK. He is a player that I have followed quite extensively. I mean, what have you guys made of his play from the European Masters?
Well, I feel like that the one standout performance from Yenax was that one game on Renekton where he absolutely obliterated Leader in the mid lane, and overall I feel like that he's a young talent that showcased a lot in the EU Masters, and I think that there is high potential now that he's joined the SK main roster. We could see him come onto the stage. SK are in a bit of a slump. He could be one of the players that kind of shakes up their play style and turns things around for them.
Something that I always remember from EU Masters with Yenax was his breadth of champions that he could play. He could play like top lane champions, like you said, Renekton, before that was becoming super meta, and that's always really exciting to see. The European Masters is a hotbed for talent here in EU, and it is that visible pipeline. But do you know what? We have a lot of European talent here, and we've actually recently come into acquisition of the greatest title in League of Legends. Medic, take us down a trip down memory lane.
Thank you very much, Excoundrel. Now, throughout history, people have battled over titles. Emperors, lords, czars, not kings. Being champion has always been the greatest achievement. It's inspired countless songs and countless wars. MSI champions, world champions, Rift Rivals champions, all these titles are the aspiration of every player of the game. But one title stands greater, in an echelon all by itself. It is, of course, the Unofficial World Championship belt. Forged in Freak's basement all the way back in 2011, Fnatic were the first to claim the title. Since then, the belt has been shrouded in antiquity. It's ping-ponged around the globe. A whisper of it in China, a glance of it in North America. It journeyed around the world, and its legend was heard in 9 different regions. Now, for the longest time, it stayed in China, lost to the rest of the world. But our story does not end there. Invictus Gaming laid claim to the belt, wearing it with pride at MSI. Their pride soon dented by SKT. And then, oh glorious day, G2 arose. Not the heroes we deserved, but the heroes Europe needed right now. They slew SKT and returned the Unofficial World Championship belt to its rightful place. Fnatic went on to reclaim it with their defeat of G2 only a month ago, and many thought it had finally returned home 8 years later. But looking to the west, dark storm clouds were brewing. TSM, although not as good as Rogue, TSM took down Fnatic, and for a moment the world was shocked. We held our breath, we were silenced. But not for long. Origen worked as a team, they were motivated and improved to bring the title back to Europe. Now in the last 2 weeks, Rogue and Misfits have laid claim to the title. For now, all that matters is Europe are still world champions, unofficially. Now, one of the players that held the biggest title in esports is Fnatic's Hylissang, a true LEC legend.
The first time I met Hilly was in the gaming house. The way he sees relationships, the way he puts his trust in people is crucial. When he really wants something, it's beautiful. He has this creativity, this positive way to solve things. It usually translates in games with some insane move.
with it, but they've got it.
Hylissang gets 3! Run down Unicorn. Another one! That's another one. It's Power of Evil.
He has flash on, he's going to do something with it. He never has flash on. He needs to feel his whole team is going to follow him. This guy is creating fighting opportunities, and it usually leads the team to victory. I think summer 2015, when we lose versus Fnatic, I'm not even sure we were that sad. That's the first year of Unicorns of Love, and we were only really losing versus Fnatic, which was by far one of the strongest teams in Europe back then. I believe Unicorns of Love was the best setup for Hilly to get into the real life of being a pro gamer, because we were so protective of our guys. We had this family environment, this family vibe. I think 2017 was the most frustrating, where we literally failed 3 times in a row, 3 fucking times. I think that broke us. I remember the last talk we had, we knew we couldn't do it anymore. We tried 3 years in a row, and I couldn't tell him goodbye. What I wanted to tell Hilly around the end of Unicorn is, where are you gonna go? What do you want to do? And I'm so happy he ended up with Reckless.
Like, I don't know, this is like a dream of mine to go to Worlds and be #1 in Europe, so this would be amazing feelings, yeah.
Well, Hylissang has actually been a guy that I've wanted to play with for a long time. I always thought that he was like one of the best playmaking supports out there. I always thought he was just able to step up and make the game-winning play.
Gonna get interrupted there. Jack Scholl from below.
After spending 3 years with the Unicorns of Love and being denied Worlds every single time, I think Hylissang realized that if he wanted to look to the international stage, he was going to have to look for a different team. 2018 was the breakout year for Hylissang. He joined Fnatic and went on to cruise to a first place finish in the spring split, finding alongside players that could perform at his level. Hylissang's high impact playstyle just let Fnatic go to the next level. It was this spring split when he went on to the finals where he absolutely destroyed G2 in 3 games. That people finally were able to say, yes, he is one of the best, and yes, he is on his way to becoming a legend.
Hylissang hoists it.
For his first time since being a professional player, Hylissang made it to Worlds. And now this was his chance to prove that he could compete with the best. No matter what Hylissang did, it felt like it was out of his control.
The damage is through, and Brox has found himself one. Noaz is taken down as the Shy makes it an even trade. They're still looking for Hylissang. This chase isn't over. He's running down towards the bottom lane, but there's nowhere to go. He's running the wrong way. Rip. I don't think there's any way out of that one, though. And Invictus Gaming are your 2018 World Champions.
The World Finals against IG was the highest moment in Hylissang's entire career, but he got destroyed. And to taste that defeat must have been so bitter for Hylissang, whose entire career has just been getting to the finals and then losing for so long. After all was said and done, this was still Hylissang's best ever year as a pro player. He had won his first domestic championship, and he had made it to the finals at Worlds. There isn't a single support in EU that could say that, other than Hylissang.
I think Hilly right now is the best support in the LEC.
He's on a control ward, finally he's going to land, but here comes Hylissang straight onto the backline of Whipper there with the follow-up, the CC chain. Flash away from Nukeduck, Broxer misses with the cast, Nemesis can still go with the chase. Here's Hylissang, Nukeduck looking to get across the wall with a charm from Hylissang, gets him in his second kill.
But it's not actually allowing you to be in.
There's no way you should be able to hit that cast today, was going away, but Hylissang on the chase couldn't quite land the tier man. Hylissang, he's vying for the best pike in Europe. Capstrong, no way, through at the heart.
Fnatic put so much faith in Hylissang to start off fights, whether it's his Pyke or his Rakan. He is consistently being put on playmakers and given the initiative to try and start off fights to make the big plays and to lead Fnatic to having another successful game.
100% playoff participation, and obviously he's fighting for that with Fnatic right now. Great to hear from Hylissang. But we've got a whole new section for you now. This is very interesting. Do you have a comp that you want us to analyze? Because if you do, I've got the 2 best analysts in terms of predictions.
Best analysts in the world.
Vedius
Let's
right
go.
there.
We can break down any comp.
You can break
Easy.
down any comp.
Pike, and Pike. I've got that. That's TFT.
We've received your comp ideas on Twitter with your ranks. So let's start off with this one from Fnatic IET.
Let's have a look.
Pass.
Okay. So no, here's the thing. We were told it was going to be top to bot. So Lulu is playing top lane. Then Kindred, Kayle mid, Kog'Maw and Ivan. I like the Ivan Kog'Maw synergy.
Do you?
Yeah, because
Is that your favorite synergy?
Here's the thing, right? You hide him in the bush. You just hide him in the bush forever, and then you put the Kayle. It's Juggernaut. It's a Juggernaut unkillable Kog'Maw comp. You can't kill him if you can't see him. And then you have Lamb's Respite, you have Kayle.
The only way in which I'd make this work is if I put the smite on the Ivern and you run a roaming jungle, like stealing camp kind of setup.
I like the idea.
It looks like it's pure protect the Kog'Maw, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It definitely is. I just, like...
Double ardent senses.
The problem is, like, with this comp is you have absolutely no pressure anywhere. Maybe if you go AD Lulu, you can make it work.
Okay, we're talking about solo queue, okay? Who needs in terms of pressure and priority?
I need to move on to the next comp now, guys. Let's have a look from Nikki Dow.
Wait, do we know what rank that one was?
I don't have confirmation, but I will. If I get confirmation, I'll let you know. This is the next.
Now, this is a comp. I like this one.
I love the Ashe support. I'm a big fan of that.
This is just, so what this is Xerath, Jhin, Ashe, poke, right?
Okay.
And then the moment you get a target low,
Yeah.
Shaco execute.
Easy. I love this comp. I really like this comp.
The Gnar is just there.
And the good thing about
you don't
Ashe,
even need him.
I mean, he's a ranged top laner, right?
Sure.
We've got a few bad.
and an engage tool if you ever need
Yeah.
one, right? But alongside the
fighting.
Ashe with the arrow, you get someone caught out. And then Jhin, Ashe, Jhin really struggles in the lane sometimes to wave play easy because you have to burn your Q all the time. So Ashe gives you a little bit more wave play, a little bit more push pressure.
This is a great comp.
Really
this
good.
is way better
Love
than
it.
comp number 1.
Only one glacial though, which sucks.
Of course. Now, let's move on to our final comp from Migu Rail, the Freylord Stomp comp.
The Freljord Stomp.
Freljord
Oh,
Stomp.
I love it.
Oh, 4 glacials. I love
Yeah.
that. Right, so they've got engage. They've got engage. This is
Disengage.
This is a great comp. I love this.
I know, Ornn's a bit out of place. He's not
This
blue.
is actually
He's from Feyord, though.
This
Yeah,
is
so-
the perfect flex queue comp,
Yeah, I love
in my
this.
opinion, because it's like very straightforward. All you have to do is group and fight. You've got loads of CC, plenty of scaling options. This is a very well-rounded, healthy comp.
And the great thing is, if you miss like 2 of your big ults,
You got
you've still
another
got a third one to follow it up, right?
I love it. This is great.
Yeah. And
It's
you've got Dive Bomb
this is
Lissandra if you
medic
really
proof.
need it. Yeah.
He could jungle in this game and still
real
win.
I could because
comps
it's
that we've been-
Sejuani and not Jarvan.
Exactly.
Right, I need to get Medic under control here. He's
Sorry.
off
I'm
one.
coming
one.
now. Coming.
Now, I finally got a composition submitted by G2 Esports. This is a surprise submission that we had right at the end here. Guys, what do you make of it?
Terrible. I don't
Yeah.
think any of these players can play Pyke.
No, I agree.
I've never
I agree.
seen a G2
And
player
They're
actually
obviously
succeed.
trying to play around the extra gold they get from the new cuts, right? But they're not very good at getting kills either, so you're never even going to get any cuts. It's bad comp. G2 Grabs should be fired.
Yeah.
Ocelot, I'm talking to you.
Yeah,
Fire
don't
man,
let
fire,
if
fire.
Grab submitted this.
Ooh.
Right, I need to move on. That was obviously a real comp that we've seen many times, obviously. Let's check out the schedule for today. See if any of the pros draw inspiration from the comps that you submitted, because they have got some big games to look forward to today. And coming up on the screen, you'll see I'm personally looking forward to Schalke versus Splice, which I believe is our 3rd game of the day. A very close matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the big ones of the day, and it's going to be a large part of deciding whether or not Schalke can fight for the top spots. I'm personally taking a gamble once again. Vitality almost did it yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take another gamble here with the Schalke squad, because I think that they can upset Splice. I think they can challenge that top 2 spot.
That was my hardest decision of the day as well. I think I went Splice in the end because I hope they rectified their problems from yesterday. The last game as well is just an incredible game to watch. Like Origen Fnatic has always been a marquee matchup here, so I'm really looking forward to that one.
And I think, obviously, we've got some other good games to look forward to. Rogue versus Vitality, both of them need the wins. XL versus Misfits is going to be a huge game, both of those surprise wins yesterday. But let's have a look how our analysts did with their predictions, because for the first time ever, like I said at the start, Medic is here for the predictions, and he is our current superior analyst in the LEC, leading
Temporarily our superior analyst.
You're 6 points behind Vedius.
I am ahead of StatsBot.
You're 7 points behind. You've got even
ahead
worse.
of StatsBot.
I need to pull you up on, guys, and I want to ask you a couple of your opinions. I want to have a look at some of the differences between your predictions here, which means the only one that you predicted differently is going to be Schalke versus Splyce. So, why, Vedius, have you gone for Schalke over Splyce here?
So one of the biggest things I think is that I think that both teams have developed a lot in terms of their mid-jungle synergy. However, I think laning has a lot more importance right now in terms of being able to gain pressure and how you actually execute. And while I think that we've seen improvements from Kobe and Norskeren, I just have a lot more faith in Upset and Ignite. And even though they died 2v2 yesterday, admittedly, that was a mistake. They didn't die. That was,
that was
against the
different
Kaiser
lane.
Thrashers that they died to. But I still have a lot of faith in that duo bot, and I just feel like that the impact that Ignite and Trick are having right now in games, I just see a lot more consistency from this team, and I feel like they make fewer mistakes. So I'm putting my faith in them today.
Medic, why Splyce?
I can see where Vedius is coming from. I think I agree with you mostly on the points, but Splyce, the only time they make mistakes is in the mid game. They're really good at getting these early game leads, and I think that Duke will have had a word with them yesterday and say, hey guys, just don't step into no vision. Like we've seen Kobe doing it a lot. We've seen them overstepping. It is a hard change to make overnight, but I have enough faith in Splyce that they won't make the same mistake they made yesterday.
I definitely feel that yesterday was an exception, not the norm, right? What we saw from them was ultimately very poor play, and I think that that's not likely to happen again. That's why I think it will be a very close match, and probably our closest match of the day.
I think it's going to be incredibly close. I want to draw your attention to both of you have picked Fnatic for our final game of the day, which is going to be our match of the week, Fnatic versus Origen. This is going to be super hype. Two EU powerhouses here to prove that they have what it takes to make those playoffs and get a good spot in the standings.
You say powerhouses, maybe we can't say that right now because both these teams have been exceptionally shaky, and it's funny because I've been getting a lot of social media criticism on my comments about Fnatic, about why are you going so hard on them? Why do you think it's so poor? Like they've had 1 or 2 bad games. No, they've had 2 weeks of bad games now, and it feels like that they're actually getting worse. Like yesterday, some of the early pathing that we saw was shocking from Broxah, and I feel like that there are a lot more issues going on with Fnatic right now that we need to pay attention to, because while we did predict Fnatic versus Origen, I think that just also highlights some of the performances from Origen as well.
I think the big thing with Origen is you know that Alphari is going to be your rock in the top lane, and what we saw yesterday was that rock kind of crumbled a little bit. He went 0-5 on the Jax, and when he's not there to be a foundation for the team, the rest of the team really just seems to run around like headless chickens. They struggle a lot. So today, if Origen are going to win, Alphari needs to be there and come up trumps.
I think it is obvious that this is a big match just from the gravitas that it has from Spring. This was the semi-finals match between Fnatic and Origen. Origen took that series to go on to face G2, but they are still both in a little bit of a slump. They both need to prove themselves here, and it is huge for playoffs and top 2.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Because I think that proving themselves is the biggest deal right now, because you want to be looking good towards the second half of the split. They still have plenty of time to fix a lot of their issues, and many fans want to see both these teams return to form, given that the rest of the league is only getting more competitive, and these playoff spots, there's still a lot left of the split, so a lot can happen in this period of time.
I do think that's a big worry. When you look at the rest of the schedule, if you've still got people like G2, like Schalke, like Splyce to play in the second half of the split, you're in a really difficult position if you're not winning games like this. You have to beat the people around you.
So I think we can draw our attention away from the final game of the day and head to the first game of the day. It'll be Vitality versus Rogue, and we said earlier it is a pivotal match in the race for playoffs. Both teams had a shaky performance yesterday. I'm putting it at shaky.
Yeah, you're being kind, okay? You're only here for a week. I'm going to say they were both terrible yesterday. They both really struggled. It was very disappointing to see the way these teams played. Rogue just didn't really do anything against Excel, who had a very strong early game, and then Vitality, just their decision-making in the late game was diabolically bad.
And I feel like a lot of it came down to the drafts for me, and I want to start off with Rogue's comp. What we see here is that they prioritized Sona Taric very early on in the draft. And what I want to iterate is they did this on the blue side, right? And what they couldn't guarantee was strong solo lane matchups, which means that their top laner got counterpicked, they had losing pressure in bot side, and so pretty much all of the pressure fell onto Inspired in the game to try and make something happen. And while he did try, it did not come to fruition. So they just slowly lost and lost and lost, and they didn't respect XL's early game.
Well, my question to you is then, how would you fix this for them? Do you just want to see priority for Larson and Profit? Is that essentially
Well,
what
I
you're
just
saying?
think they need to move away from this.
Right, move away
I
from
mean, like,
this.
I think that this can be good, and I think it's possible, but we've seen so many nerfs to things like the Tahm Kench, and I think that so many answers have come out for Sona Taric as well, that like you can't just reliably blind pick it anymore. So I'd like to see them move away from it, and instead go back to more of the consistency that we have seen from Rogue. Enable this mid-jungle duo more, give them the freedom to play around the bot side of the map, maybe attack the top. Ultimately, I think that what we're seeing from them is a bit of disrespect from XL that they towards XL that they can't afford to do again today against Vitality.
So I want to then move on to Vitality because you raised questions yesterday about Vitality's draft. How did their draft go in the game against Splice?
So one of the things that frustrated me was that I wanted to see them play much more towards the bot side of the map because their Draven Fiddle game when they played up against Origen was actually spectacular. I think that they did a really good job of enabling Attila, and I think that if they continued to do that, they'd find a lot more success here in the league. But they don't. They just drafted a safe bottom lane that could match the Xayah Rakan. Instead, they put a lot more focus up towards the top side of the map, and while they could find a couple of good ganks, while we did see a strong performance from Cabochard, ultimately the only reason why they even stood a chance in this game was because of the poor performances from Splice.
That was the big thing. Splice getting caught out in the mid game after developing an early lead was what gave Vitality the chance. Then Vitality ended up taking 3 Barons and not being able to close out a game. It felt very much like when they get towards these later game decisions, they're not coordinated and they're making plays like this where you're just stepping up into no vision with no other waves or anything pushing up. There's no reason for them to be that far up in the bottom lane at that time.
And it feels like that every time a Vitality fix one mistake, they bring about a new one, right? And at one point it was like, okay, their bot lane needs to be more consistent, they improve their bot lane, but then their mid laner starts underperforming, and then okay, Jizuke starts playing better again, and now they're making poor decisions in the mid game. Okay, they start getting better in the mid game, and now their late game is a big problem, and it just feels like that Vitality seem to bring about new issues every time they seem to fix their old ones.
So what is it that you think they needed to reignite the old spark that we saw from previous Vitalities of years gone by? You know, that World Championship Vitality. What did they do to reignite?
I mean, the thing is, one of the greatest strengths that Vitality have as a team is their 2 solo laners.
Okay.
And the meta, in my opinion, doesn't exist where the top laner and mid laner have like the largest impact. Obviously, mid is very important, but I think that mid to bot is probably the way in which they need to adapt their playstyle, and that's the shift I want to see from them, because I think that Attila has actually had a really good performance over the last few weeks, and I think you can put him in a position to be that big carry. I mean, like, he didn't even die until like that one cannon play that he tried to make throughout the entire game, so I feel like they have very obvious ways to play through the bot, which they're not leveraging right now.
I need to briefly touch on Rogue as well, because they have their own issues that they're facing, Vedius.
Yeah, and one of the big things for me is consistency. Because I do
100%.
think that with a young team, they're still learning a lot, and we see a lot of promising things from them. But right now, we're not quite seeing them perform the same way or with the same identity in every single game.
I think the big thing is consistency for Inspired as well. When you see him on an Olaf, he is 3-1 with this team. He is very good at securing them early leads and getting them ahead. When he's not on Olaf, they struggle no end. Saw how many EQ flashes he missed yesterday. There's something about that champion that it allows Inspired to pop off.
Well, look at them, 4-7, joint in the table just below Misfits right now. This is an important game, as important really as it's going to get for these guys going into those playoff races.
In football, this is what we, this is what we call a 6-point game, right? You're pushing someone else down the standings and you're pushing yourself up the standings. Taking a win here, especially considering head-to-head in the second half of the split, winning in the second half of the split is more important than in the first half. So if you tie up, getting a win in summer pushes you up the standings and will break a tiebreaker between those two teams.
It's such an important game, and like, playoffs is still 3 weeks away, but every single one of these wins just has so much more weight to it than it did in the first half of the split. And you can't afford to experiment anymore. You can't afford to be trying new things. You need to be establishing your strengths, your weaknesses, and then enabling your team as much as you possibly can.
3 weeks is 7 games left, Vedius. They're sitting at 4 wins. 9 wins historically is how far you have to get into playoffs. You have to be winning these games, especially with G2, Fnatic, Origen, Splice on the horizon. Winning here is a must for these teams.
The stakes are very high for these two teams as they're heading into the draft. We are very shortly going to be heading into our first game of the day. And realistically, both of these teams are now sitting on the situation where they need to win. So let's head over to our casters